Valerie Ellis returns to the Wednesday Bookmark and again is helping kids and parents connect with God and each other through books and everyday moments. Her new kids' book tells Bible stories through the lens of transportation vehicles. Let's Go Bible Adventures helps kids see that even though our modes of transportation have changed over time, God's love is forever. So welcome back to the show, Valerie.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
So I just want to clarify that you're not fictionizing Bible stories to include modern modes of transportation. Because when I first read it, that's why I was like, is this what we're doing here? And then as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, it's like when you're teaching a group of kids and you're like, how did Elijah get to heaven? Was it in a rocket ship? No. Was it in a plane? No. So can you explain like how vehicles are used in the book and how we're on this adventure with God?
Yes. I'm so glad that you picked up on that and also led with that because as a young Christian mom, that is the opposite of what I would have wanted for my kids as a fictionalized story of the Bible where I would have to go back then and reteach them. But no, exactly as you're saying, this book uses silly questions and modern transportation to engage kids in the Bible stories. And then they turn the page and they get to see the real story of God's truth and strength.
And I love it because there's context that you're providing. So by correcting the, like you said, silliness of it, you're explaining how they would have gotten from place to place or what tools might have been used. Like people don't realize how long it took Mary and Joseph, for example, to reach Bethlehem because they're not going by car. So I want to go over a few examples from the book because there's so many good ones. And I have kids at this age group where it's all about trucks and bulldozers and diggers. And actually, let's go there for a second. What was sort of your inspiration on which vehicles and even just why to kind of go through this theme? Because it is very appealing to this age group.
Yes. Well, I have two boys, and when they were younger, they loved all things transportation, backhoes, cars, trains. I learned so many vocabulary words that I never thought I would. And they also loved reading, and they loved reading about cars and trucks. Well, what was a harder sell was Bible stories. So I would sit down with them and try to read Bible stories, which, I really wanted to engage them in that. And it just wasn't working out. And I remember one time just a kind of silly but truthful prayer of my heart. Lord, why aren't there cars in the Bible? Why couldn't there just be a train or something?
Or a dinosaur.
Or dinosaur. Exactly. And so, but that got me thinking, could we include something kids love, but also stay true to the story? So that's kind of where it started. And then, going back to all the different kinds of cars and trucks and trains that they loved and just trying to think of, how could that relate either to an ancient mode of transportation, like very literally relate to that, or a miracle that God did.
Yeah, it's very creative because as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, okay, is there a vehicle with this? But then it's like you said, it's more of a symbolism. Mm-hmm. So as an example, Adam and Eve, I guess technically they were the first farmers, which is true. I mean, really, if you think about it. So you've got a farm tractor in this one.
Right. And so, with that story, it was, how to convey that they needed to work the land. And so that lesson is in there, that core lesson, but then saying, but how did they work the land? Was it with a tractor? And then the kids get to be the smart ones and be like, no, they didn't have tractors in the Bible. And then you get to explore together, not just what they did, but then what that means in the context of God's love and God's big story.
And then more on this kind of metaphor symbolism side, the bulldozer. That was really clever. Explain that one.
So I knew I really wanted to work in construction, but there's few stories that I felt like were kid friendly that also involved building. But I tried to think, a little bit about what does the story of, in this case, John the Baptist mean? John the Baptist is saying, everyone get ready for Jesus. And so he's actually talking about making a way, making a path. And so I use that to say, was he talking about making a literal path? Which is a good question that kids often have, like, well, what, because we hear things as kids. I remember misconceptions I had in my own childhood, and you take it literally, but in this case, he wasn't meaning it literally. So then so the question is, was it a bulldozer? Did he mean like, let's all build some roads? And then you turn the page and you see, no, he meant, let's get our hearts ready for what Jesus is going to say. Let's make a path right into our hearts so we can take in God's words.
Yeah. I also love the idea of people coming in busloads to hear Jesus speak, but that's obviously not what happened.
Right. And so that goes back to one of my kids' favorite things were bus rides, but we lived close enough to school that they didn't get to do a lot of bus rides. And one time we took this Christmas light adventure where they took you on a bus to the Christmas lights. They could not care about those Christmas lights. They were excited about the bus. And so the question in that one is, Jesus had so many words of wisdom. When he wanted to teach people, did he bring everyone there in buses? Did they go to school? And that's something kids can really relate to. But no, he went out to them. And so then you get to see Jesus and his disciples going out to heal and teach.
Yeah. I love it. There's a story behind every one of these. Okay, let me do at least one more here, because I think most kids this age, monster trucks are like at the top. And this was a great use of monster trucks in the David and Goliath story. Go ahead with that one.
Yes. So we are all familiar with the story. David comes upon the campground and Goliath is, saying things against God. And David says, well, I can go fight him. But did he take a monster truck? Did he, get his strength from something like that? And then, of course, no, he got his strength from God. And each story has a little fun fact at the end. So, just to give people an idea, on the first 2-page spread, it's 4 rhyming lines that introduces the story and asks a silly question. Then you turn the page and there's 4 more rhyming lines that finish the story. And then there's a little fun fact. And so in this one, we actually talk about how they didn't have monster trucks back in that day, but they did have armor. But even still, that's not what David used to get his strength. He used God's strength.
Yeah, so good. You mentioned earlier in our conversation that as a mom, you were really looking for more ways to be able to read the Bible, to get in the Bible with your kids. And it sounds like you've really found some other moms who have a similar heart and passion. What is that like, obviously, with our Everyday Parables website, which is a great resource, but also just the importance of connecting with other parents and finding community? What has that meant to you?
Yes. I mean, there's so much I could talk about there. And I really feel like, with our everyday parables, we try to bring out God in the everyday moments and help parents build that. And then also using children's books to talk about God, maybe even it's not a children's book about God, but we can bring out those themes. And then just connecting with parents. I've been so inspired by all the different ways that people are helping kids relate to God and connect with God. Through play and playing through the Bible and through good questions, and just learning that sometimes asking those questions, even if kids don't have an answer, it gets them in a habit of thinking about the things of God.
I think too, like when you're around other moms who are trying to, like you said, that's very intentional about this, you almost get more confident in working that into everyday conversation. Like, and I think this book is a great tool because we do see these vehicles everywhere. We'll see ice cream trucks in the summertime. We'll see a plane go overhead. Have you ever been in a hot air balloon, Valerie?
I have not.
Yeah, me neither.
But I've gone to where they have a bunch go up and, just the beauty of that. So fun.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, even though they didn't have jet planes, ambulances, ice cream trucks, food trucks, all this stuff, there are similarities that you're hoping that kids will see. So can you wrap us up with that?
Yes. So one thing we talk about in our everyday parables that I think really relates to this book is looking for God in the everyday. And like you said, we will see these cars and trucks around. And so one phrase I like to use that I think is really easy for other parents to adopt as well is just that reminds me. So you're out and you see something in nature. Oh, that reminds me of how God cares for us. Or, you're getting things ready for school and, labeling your backpack reminds me that God knows your name. And so with this book, it could be like, oh, that reminds me that ice cream truck, like God doesn't provide for the Bible characters in that way, but he did provide in this way, and maybe even recalling the story or just talking about the general theme of care. It doesn't have to be specifically back to the story.
Yeah, that's so good. It's a resource, but it's also entertaining and it gets kids learning about the Bible. It's so fun. It's a rhyming storybook that tells real Bible stories and it contrasts Bible times transportation with modern day vehicles. And again, like we talked about, the symbolism of it too, and really helping our kids get on this adventure with God. Valerie, I so appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's called Let's Go Bible Adventures. Valerie Ellis. Thank you.
Thank you.